Well, congratulations on your 2 nominations.
Thank
That's
you.
like so cool. Like, you're going against yourselves.
I know. we were like, is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah,
I don't know.
How is it working on one series different than the other? I mean, they're polar opposites in so many ways, but I guess they're also true crime stories. So
yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right. They are totally polar opposites, but but there are many times where the stories intersect in the drama. Like, Pam and Tommy were following the arc of this couple and their story and their rise and fall. And in Dopesick, we're sort of following Sam Phoenix's, his struggle with pharmaceutical drug abuse and his sort of rise and fall. So it is sort of just like a testament to the human, I guess the drama behind relationships and your own relationship with yourself.
Yeah,
but as far as like an energy level, they are polar opposites in that sense.
Yeah.
But it was cool to be a part of, like, I mean, like a 90s kid, that lightning rod that Pam and Tommy were back then, and then such like a big thing in pop culture, and then dealing with the pharmaceutical issue now, that being such a relevant thing that is happening now, it's pretty cool to work on both of these shows that have that kind of impact.
They're dated, but they're still socially and culturally relevant.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. I wanted to ask you first about Dopesick. Michael Keaton's character, Sam Phoenix, he really goes through a journey on the show. How does the sound of the show, the tone of the show shift over 8 episodes, or especially around his addiction? I was completely surprised that they showed a doctor becoming addicted. Like, I thought that was really...
I know. And it was really, it was all based on really true events, like this character was sort of like based on things that really happened. And, the sound was, it's funny, like you look at shows like this and it's like, this isn't a Marvel show. So when you think sound, like, there's 0 gun battles in Dopesick, right? There's no lasers. But so the sound design is it's sort of more philosophical in its approach. And, one thing that we really were conscious of early on was like, okay, how do we isolate him throughout the series? So it's like, you look at the first episode and we try to establish a pretty busy mining community, with people, the environments, life, birds, insects, and all that stuff. And then as he sort of is falls into this addiction, we sort of peel some of those layers away and mute that world around him. So it's isolating and sort of a reflection of his journey through this addiction. So
yeah, it's I'm glad that you picked him to kind of focus on, because it's the perfect part to focus on him. He's very charismatic and lively in the beginning of the show, and when this addiction starts to take over, his quality of life diminishes immensely. And so, the world around him diminishes with that. So it was very important to be, to make sure that world around him was diminishing equally, by creating it however we could sonically, like, putting him in different situations that he would not be, or different areas and, bad neighborhoods, that kind of thing that he would not be. And so it was really fun to kind of keep the arc of that with the sound as well, follow his arc with sound.
That's really interesting. And then another character who really goes on a journey is Betsy. And I wanted to ask you guys about, like, what was it like putting together the mine explosion scene? That had to be, that had to be a lot to consider.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, fun in the sense like
not fun for Betsy, but
the story was not fun. Yeah. But we mixed this show in Dolby Atmos, which is it's a really great format that allows you to sort of point source sounds, and so while they're in the mine, the idea was we have these really distant sort of explosion sounds that happen, we put above us, and then all the sort of debris and gravel that we saw on screen was happening, we can feel the detail of that. Whereas, stereo or 5.1, all those sounds would kind of be coming out of the same speakers. Whereas with Atmos, we could really isolate them. So that was cool, like the sound part of it. And then emotionally, I know Nick and I worked a lot with like weaving in that sound with the score. Like at some point when we get into Betsy's head, we get out of the reality, and then we sort of bring the score in, and maybe Nick, you can talk about more how the score.
Yeah. So just a little background too. So I handle all the dialogue and the music in the mix, and Ryan handles all the effects, background, Foley, all that kind of stuff. So we work together, and we've worked together for years now. So we have a really good, we kind of know where each other's at and what we're going to do. So we bounce ideas off each other all the time. And this scene specifically, we were really trying to weave the music in a way where the explosion was most impactful. So I think, Ryan, you can help me out too. I think we ended up building the music up, and then at a certain point we just cut out of it. I think in the explosion, you really kind of feel that tension rising as you see the flame coming, I think, in her glasses, and then when it hits, is that the right one? Am I
yeah,
the right one,
there's
right?
Yeah, there's the score was composed to sort of go, lay throughout the whole scene, and it was a really effective score. I mean, it really was very emotional, but it was delicate, and so to combine the music and all those big effects that are going on, it was sort of just like a cacophony of sound that didn't really make sense. So yeah, we sort of worked really hard on when to sort of peel out of certain things, when to bring certain things up, and to kind of isolate the moments because it happens so fast. So you want, your brain wants to process. Okay, I'm paying attention to the reality of the catastrophe. Okay, now I'm feeling more emotional with Betsy. So
yeah, and in the room too, because we did it in Atmos. I remember Ryan had the rumble kind of coming from behind us all the way through, so you could kind of almost feel the explosion coming through the mine and hitting the front when it hit her, and it was pretty awesome the way that one came out.
And to be able to move those sounds around us, it sort of like mimicked sort of the claustrophobia of working in a mine, right? So there's like all this big stuff that's happening, but we still felt like we were confined in a small space, which is sometimes difficult to achieve.
Yeah. How does this moment play into her sonic journey? Like, I mean, I'm assuming it's a turning point. So was it different for her beforehand? Did you use different sounds? And then now, like, did the sounds change after this for her?
I think really a lot of Betsy's sort of addiction was sort of scored, like that. The score played a huge part, I think, in her sort of, her fall. So maybe Nick can kind of sort of.
Yeah, I think, with Betsy, she goes back and forth from her parents' house, and her parents' house is still, it's not like a bright, cheery place, but it's not, she goes between that and like kind of the slums where she's dealing with all this stuff. So, we wanted to stay true to the environments that she's in, but really, I think the score that, Lauren Balfe did with her, taking her on that journey you wanted to get really emotionally attached to her. And I think that was achieved mostly through the score with her. The arc of her story wasn't as extreme as Dr. Phoenix's with the sound design. I think that was more a musical kind of arc with her.
That's really interesting. That's so cool. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you about Pam and Tommy.
All right, let's go.
So on a lighter note, let's. So you're in the 90s. Like, how did you maximize this? Does the 90s sound different than today? I'm assuming it probably does.
Oh my
absolutely.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. Like, it's so fun to like work on a period piece, and it's weird to call the 90s a period piece.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
but it is, it's a different palette of sounds to work from, right? And so
there's no text messages sounds.
No texting, yeah.
Wow.
and so I think we were, our goal is to use that technology as sort of storytelling devices, right? So we viewed the timeline of Pam and Tommy as like two periods. The first is like the old analog world, right? And then there's a crossover into the new digital internet world. And for us, it was really important to establish like those two periods because they mark sort of the rise and fall of their relationship, right?
Yeah.
So with the old analog world, we used, hi-8 tapes, camcorders, and all that stuff, clunky sort of rewinding sounds. And in this world, Pam and Tommy's relationship flourishes, right? It's full of love, fun, authenticity, and as a viewer, it's pleasant to watch this moment in there. And then it's about episode 4 when we reach, the halfway through the series, and we're introduced to this new digital technology world, and the internet. So we used like the buzzing and winding of hard drives and
modems,
dial-up modems, yeah. And in this world, the relationship fails, right? So it was, from the beginning, it was a very conscious effort for the whole sound team to really focus on the distinction between these two sort of time periods, and make a dramatic shift in the soundscapes, because it's a reflection basically of the rise and fall of their relationship.
That's great. Nick, did you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. In episode 4, we're really taking, like, that's when they realize it's on the internet, and I think the episode starts out with a computer, no sound other than just the computer doing that like ticking, and then you hear the modem kick in. It's like every AOL kid knows that modem sound, you know what I mean? Like, so it just kind of takes you back to like, oh wow, it's really cool to like to be able to show a timeline with sounds so specific to that era. It was really fun. And I have to give a shout out to Matt Margison, his score. He did some incredible work with the score. Like in the very beginning, you hear a lot of tape sounds winding up and slowing down, all kind of in time with the music. And then as we transition to the internet, he's doing a lot of like modem sounds that are intertwined with what he's doing with the melodies and all this really cool, intricate stuff. So, he was on board with that too. Unbeknownst to us, we all just kind of did this, and it just worked fantastically.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you guys about that, like the score's like non-musical elements. So I guess you kind of touched on that, but like how did the score create dissonance with the real world sonic elements, and was that a challenge?
Go ahead, Ryan.
No, let's say yes, it certainly was a challenge in that we heard, there's not often effects like that in music. So sometimes it was like, okay, the music is doing this, so it was almost like a subtractive thing. We were like, okay, well, what can we peel away to feature, this music, because it's telling the story the best. But in other scenes, it was like, okay, we're supposed to be focusing on what's happening on the screen, and these sounds are kind of distracting. So maybe we'll pull those elements out of the music and we'll feature the real world. And it's just kind of a balancing act and playing off of one another that I think sort of was the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, I think our with the score, the biggest challenge was not being confusing, right? We didn't want to confuse the audience saying, well, is this part of the score? Is this, are we supposed to be looking at a computer? I don't understand what I'm hearing. So we were trying to be very delicate in what we were focusing on, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure that all of those really intricate things that Matt did in the score were able to come through, and you could really hear them, because it was so good. And again, we mixed this in Dolby Atmos too. So in the room that we were listening in, I had really opened up the score in the room, and it just created this whole world of sound in there, which that was great too. And so it was a lot of fun. This is Pam and Tommy. I saw, from a sound standpoint, was a blast to work on. It was, it was just so different than Dopesick, but they're both fun. But this one,
Pam and Tommy was like deceptively challenging. Like you watch and you say, okay, and it works, but it works because it was so carefully planned and thought out.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, you can probably hear my dog in the background.
Okay. My cat, I just got a cat, and she's a kitten, and she's like biting my feet, and I'm like, do you last 5 more minutes?
Actually, well, those are all my questions. You guys, you answered a lot of things that I was going to ask.
Oh, wow.
You guys spoke so well to it. But yeah, great work on both shows. And
do
you have any kind of preference over who win? Which show wins?
I don't know. Well, I'm also nominated for White Lotus, so
my God.
Nick hopefully I don't win that one.
Yeah, he better not win for that. If he wins for that, I'm gonna trip him as he's walking up.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, I mean, these were both. I'm so honored to be part of both of these. I mean, it's everybody that I know that have watched Dopesick has just been blown away by the show. It's as they should be. I mean, it's so incredible. But the people who got through the first 3 episodes of Pam and Tommy were blown away too. But the first 3 episodes are a wild ride. You know? And I think a lot of people were like, "What are we getting into?"
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, it just to get nominated has been pretty. You know,
they're both great shows, and I think they're deserving of all the other awards also that they got. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure chatting with you guys.
Awesome. Sure. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Great work.
All right.